Let's see, the most important concept of object-oriented programming is constructors and destructors. Okay, so we will understand this through so many programming examples. I'll give an overview why what is the use of these constructors and destructors. Generally, we say for structures also we say this: when you create a structure, struct student, and if you write some int a, char b, and float c, right? And in main, from main you will write student s1. We said that when, as soon as or whenever you create an object, only when the object or the variable for the structure is created, only when the variable for the structure is created, then the memory is allocated for this three variables. Memory allocation happens only after creation of the variable. Okay, how much memory is allocated for variable s1? It depends on the whether it is alignment or non-alignment based compiler. Okay, if it is non-alignment based compiler, then it is 4 plus 1 plus some 8. Simple, just maybe assume 4 plus 1 plus 8. So 13 bytes will be reserved if it is a non-alignment compiler, right? So only when this variable is created, memory is allocated. Same is applicable for class. We say class student, and I declare some variables here. So from main, when you create the object, memory is allocated, we say, right? But are we assigning any values to those variables? Are we assigning any values to those variables here? See this. I have a class with me, class student. I have some public only, I will keep it here. Let's put all public. I have int a comma b, and there is some function display. In the some statements are there inside that, and with this I am closing my class. So in main, from main I will be creating a variable student s1. So what will happen now? Once I create an object s1 for this class student, memory will be allocated. How much memory? 4 plus 4, 8 bytes will be allocated. But what is the value in those variables? What is the value in these variables a and b? There is no values. I am not assigning any values, right? It contains some garbage value. No values are assigned. It contains some garbage value, right? So I want, right, as soon as I create an object, I want these two variables a and b to have some default values in them. Okay, as soon as I create an object s1, I want to have some default values for this a and b. Instead of garbage, I want to put some a equal to 0 and b equal to 0 initially. Okay, that step can happen with the help of creating a constructor. Why it is called constructor? Constructing and destructing. What does it constructs? It constructs the default arguments. It constructs the default values to the variables inside the class. That's why it is called constructor. It means allocating these values to these variables a and b. Okay, so let's try to explore this theoretically, right? So constructors and destructors are special member functions used to manage the life cycle of an object. Okay, they are special member functions. They're used to manage the life cycle of an object. How? Right? A constructor is a special member function that is automatically called when an object of a class is created. It's a default function, you can say. It's a function. It's a kind of function. As soon as you are creating an object, that function will be invoked. Okay, so maybe sometimes we may have some situations like if I create an object, do this a equal to 0, b equal to 0. I want this to happen. Or if I create an object, I want a to become -1 and -1 like this, -1 like this. I want to assign these default values as and when the object is created. Okay, so see, constructor is a special member function that is automatically called when an object of a class is created. Okay, so what is the prime purpose of it? To initialize the object's data members. In a class, I have some private or public variables. I may have private or I may have public variables, data members. Inside class we call them as data members. So those data members does not have any value, they have garbage, right? When is memory allocated? Memory is allocated when I create an object, but do they have any values? No. But this, using the constructor concept, we will assign, memory will be allocated and those variables will be assigned some default values. Okay, that's what the primary purpose is, to initialize the object's data members. So in the class maybe here in this example, I am having two variables here, name and age, right? I want to assign some values to this name and age, default values I want to assign. For that, you have to define a constructor. So these two are called constructors. These are called constructors. Okay, what they will do, when will these two functions, see they are looking like function, no? Something like this, student and round bracket is there, it is something like function. See again I am using flower brackets also, so it's very clear this is a function. Okay, so as soon as you are creating an object, this function will be executed by default. Whatever statements you write in that will be executed. Okay, so that is a constructor. See, right? What is a destructor? Destructor is a special member function that is automatically called when the object goes out of scope or is explicitly deleted. When you delete an object, right, this default destructor will be executed. Okay, so the main role is to clean up resources allocated. The destructor's job is to, whatever memory is allocated for that object, to erase that. We use it. Okay, constructors and destructors, they are special member functions to manage the life cycle of an object, to initialize some values and to erase the memory allocated. We use these two things. Okay, where can we use them? See, allocating memory dynamically in constructor and releasing it in destructor. I think you are aware of this malloc function. Like we are using this malloc function to allocate memory dynamically. That can be done in constructors. Okay, and if you want to delete free, when you are implementing linked list, right, you can use this constructor concept. Okay, and then we are releasing it, means you can use this, whenever you are using free pointer, free of temp, you are writing in linked list concept. So that can be written inside the destructor. Okay, you will understand this much better when you see some examples, when you see some programming and how they work. Okay, so this is one example. Other one, initializing files or database connections in a constructor and closing them in the destructor. Okay, so now see, when you wrote the linked list problems, okay, we always have to do this, right? Struct temp star new node, struct node star new node equal to, you are writing this again, struct node malloc, right? You are writing size of struct node, you are giving this syntax. After this, there were two default syntaxes, right? There were three common statements to create a node. Right? These three, we could place them inside the constructor. Where as and when the object is created, this node will be created. Another object is created, another node will be created. That way you can do it automatically. Instead of calling the function, these three statements will execute whenever you create an object. That object will have control over this new node. Okay, let's see the applications of this constructor. So if you see once again, they are special member functions. Constructor is a function that is automatically called when an object of the class is created. Its main job is to initialize the object's data members. There is a class, there are some variables inside that class. I want to initialize them with some default values when the object is created. Okay, so they are functions. Let's see some example here. Okay, so in detail about constructors, let us study in detail about constructors. So constructors in C++ is a special method that is invoked automatically at the time an object is created. Okay, it is used to initialize the data members of the new objects generally. Whenever I create an object, it has some data members. Those I want to initialize. Okay, the constructor in C++ has the same name as the class name. It has the same name as the class name. Suppose the class name is class student, okay, class student, then constructor name also should be student only, student, and as a function you write something here in the flower brackets. So this is the constructor. When will this execute? When will this function execute? This function will be executed when you create an object for this class student. Okay, so the name of the constructor will be the name of the class, right? So it constructs the values. It constructs the values, that is provides data for the object, which is why it is known as constructor. Okay, it provides data for the object. See, S1 object I am creating student S1. Okay, what does S1? S1 is a object for a class student. What does the class contain? Class contain name and roll number. There are two variables in that, right? To assign, to give some input to those variables, I can use this like this, because they are private data members. When they are private data members, I cannot directly write S1 dot name or S1 dot roll number. I cannot do that. For that, we can use constructors concept. Okay, again if I repeat, constructor is a special method that is invoked automatically when the object is created. Its main job is to initialize the data members of the objects. Okay, the constructor in C++ has the same name of the class, right? See the syntax here, simple. Class name, round bracket and open flower bracket, close flower bracket. Inside that you can write some statements. See example here, example student, class name is student, so the constructor name is student, open flower bracket. See, I am assigning roll number equal to 10, roll number equal to 10, like this. So when I create a object for this class student, this 10 will be assigned to that variable roll number. Okay, right. What are some important principles or characteristics of constructors? Okay, some important points to keep in mind when you work with constructors. So the first one, the name of the constructor is same as its class name. We already know this. The name of the constructor should be the name of the class. Constructors are declared in the public section. Okay, they are declared in public section generally, though they can be declared in private, but the recommended one is to declare them in public section. Because in class we have private section, public section and protected section. So we have to declare the constructors in the public part. Then constructors do not return values. They do not have any return type. Though we are saying them as functions, in programming every function should have a return type. Every function should have a return type. But this constructor, though it looks like a function, it does not have a return type. Not even void. Not even void. They don't even return void. They do not have the concept of return type. Okay, a constructor gets called automatically when we create the object of the class. When you create an object, it is created automatically or it is executed automatically. Okay, it can be overloaded to create multiple versions of constructor. We will see this. This point we will cover in the due course. Okay, so these are some important points about constructor. The name of the constructor should be the class name. They should be declared in public section. They do not have any return type, and they get executed when the object is created. Let's see some examples. Okay, so there are two ways of defining a constructors. There are two ways of declaring or defining a constructor. One is defining the constructor within the class. Defining the constructor within the class. It means inside the class. So I will have a class student. Inside it I will have some private data members. Then I will have public, some functions, and then you can write this constructor like this, student, and you can give as a function, declare something here. Okay, this is possible. So this is one way of defining a constructor inside the class. If you want to do it outside the class, again we have to use scope resolution operator. Okay, if you want to define the constructor outside the class, so something like this, you just give the name of it, but you give the definition outside the class by using scope resolution operator. Class name, I think you remember we talked about this when we studied static data members. Static data members can be initialized outside class using class name, colon, the no variables. You can assign it like this: class name, scope resolution operator, and you can give the value there. Same way, if you want to define a constructor outside the class also, it is allowed. You have to write the class name and a scope resolution operator, and again the constructor name, that is nothing but the class name again. Okay, you can give it like this. Let's see two examples for that to understand, right? Let's understand this one very good example for constructor within the class. Okay, so I have a class student, I have variables roll number, name and fee. Roll number, name and fee. In the public part, right, in the public section of the class, you see, what is the name of the class? Student. I defined a constructor here. I defined a constructor student with round brackets and flower brackets. Whatever I wrote it here, what all statements are there in this? This is a constructor. The student writing like this is a constructor, defining a constructor. So whatever statements are there inside this constructor, they will be executed, they will be initialized when you create an object. So inside the class there is another function void, normal function, a void display function, right? So see, int main, I am creating a variable yes, or I am creating an object yes. For this student class, I am creating an object yes. As soon as you write this statement, okay, when you execute the program, as soon as you write this and execute the program, when this line is executed, this function is invoked. This default constructor is invoked. Okay, so enter the roll number, it takes roll number, enter the name, it takes the name, enter the fee, it takes the fee. These set of operations are performed. You execute, you can see that it is asking these three things. You are not calling it specially, it is by default called. When it is called, when you are creating an object for that class. Okay, and then I have yes.display. So display function is called. Since it is a public function, I can call it. See out endl roll number, name and fee I am printing out. I am printing those values. How did I get these values? Though they are private. Okay, but though they are private, how did I get these values? Because they are taken from using this constructor, I have read those values. Using this constructor, I have read those values. Okay, this is one best example to understand how constructor works. What's happening here? When you create an object for the class, this function, this constructor function is executed automatically. When it is executed, it asks me three things. I will enter those three things. After that, I am writing yes.display. So this display will display me the values, right? So this is one way of assigning values to these private members of the class, right? So this is an example to understand constructor within the class. Let's see the next one, constructor outside the class. Constructor outside the class, same program. I have a class student with the three variables roll number, name and fee. Roll number, name and fee. In public, see, in public, I just gave the definition. I just made the function definition. I wrote here student round bracket close, that's it. There is no body of the constructor. I just wrote it. Then normally I have void display. I think you are aware of this. In C++, if the member functions, if you want to define the body of those functions outside, simply use the class name and scope resolution operator function name. Okay, if you want to define the body of a function outside the class, then you have to use the class name, scope resolution operator, function name. That way you can define the body outside. Same thing I have done it here. See, I simply gave the definition of the constructor, but the body I wrote outside. Class name student, scope resolution operator, function name. What is function name? Student itself, because it's a constructor. So these set of statements are there. Again, display function also I wrote it outside. When I write it outside like this, what's happening? The student is the class name, scope resolution operator, function name. So see here, in this case, when I execute student yes, object is created. When object is created, this default function is executed. Where is that function? Here. This is executed. Then I am calling yes.display. So this function is executed. From this default constructor, it is taking the values, and display, it is displaying the values to me. Okay, the only point here is to tell that the public member functions of a class can be like the static data members of the class can be declared or can be defined outside class using class name, scope resolution operator, and the function name. Here for constructor, the function name itself is the class name. So class name, scope resolution operator, function name. So this will be executed when this statement is executed. Then I have displayed this function will be called. Okay, so this is an example to demonstrate how the constructor works, how we declare a constructor. Let's see again little information about constructor. They are special functions which are invoked when an object is created. Mainly that is used to initialize the data members. But we see I am initializing the data members here, right? I am taking the values and inserting them into the 3 variables. So they are executed. Next, they have the same name as the class name. Right? So they should be declared in public section. They do not return any values. See here for this display, for this example, if you see there is no return type here for this student function, whereas for display there is some return type. For all functions it is mandatory to have a return type, but for though we say constructor is a function, it should not have any return type. It won't have any return type there because it's not returning anything. It is just executing one time when an object is created. So see if for example student S1, I create an object like this, this will be executed. Again after doing some certain steps, again if I create second time another object S2, same, this will be repeated again. This student will be called. You create S3, this will be executed. You create S4, this will be executed by default. Okay, n number of objects you create, n times this default constructor or this constructor will be executed. Okay, so 2 ways of defining constructor. One is within the class, simply write under public and give some statements. Other is outside the class, you have to use class name, scope resolution operator, and function name generally, but function name itself is the class name here. So class name, scope resolution operator, again class name. No, you can define it like this. So this is about constructors, how we use them in our programs. As and when the object is created, automatically without our involvement, that particular function or that particular body of constructor will be executed. Its main purpose is to initialize values to the object variables or data members of that object. Okay, so this is about constructors. We will study the different types of constructors in the next session.